All right, good afternoon and welcome. This is Emah Naami once again, SOULONOMiCS 101, and today we have a special treat. We have an elder in the house, Emah Naami, as we call her. Welcome, Emah Naami. How are you this evening? Or
Oh,
this afternoon?
Toda, yeah, I'm fine. Toda, yeah, glad to be alive. Pray that the Most High is with you and all of your families and all of your listeners and their families.
Hallelujah. I just thought it was very interesting. I hear Emah Naami, for those who don't know, often on the prayer line. And, we got in correspondence and we're speaking, and she started speaking on an interesting yet controversial topic. And she sent me over this paper on marriage. And it was so beautifully written, I wanted to bring her in to have that conversation, especially coming from an elder. But before we go on to that topic, Emah Naami, can you officially introduce yourself and let us know who you are, how long you've been in Israel, and just some of your experiences, and allow us to glean from the elders. So the floor is yours.
Besadir. I'm Naami Baht Levi, as most of you know. My government name is something different. But anyway, this year, in fact, marks my 50th year in being in this truth. So I have much to celebrate that the Most High has opened my eyes for all of this time. I was a former member of Hashava Yisrael, called Sherit. I've been in most of the Knesset in the New York metropolitan area. I've also traveled to Tennessee, to Philadelphia, to Georgia, to other camps to see with how Israel is faring in those places, to attend conferences or workshops. I have godchildren who are in Georgia, and I have children all over the world, even though I've only birthed two of my own. What happens is that I wrote a newsletter for 10 years, from 1998 to 2008. I produced and distributed a community newsletter called the Israelite Community Newsletter, strangely enough. And I distributed it not only to all of the families that were on my mailing list, but those that did not have internet access. I actually mailed those out. And then especially to the brothers and sisters who were in prison who hadn't heard anything from Israel and were glad to get that newsletter. As it is, I think it was that habit that got me into being called the information person by default. So now I send out emails with plenty of information about Israel, about the events that happen in Israel, and I'm still doing that, up until this day. We do have a new entity in Israel. I just found out recently who they are doing a newsletter, and it is beautiful. I'm just so glad to see someone doing this, a younger person doing it, so that they will keep up this tradition of keeping Israel informed as well. So I have to say that this paper that I did on marriage, I did some research on it, and I went into the Tanakh and I went into secular materials just so that I could write this paper accurately. It is part of the commentary that I did as part of my newsletter. And I just was so glad that I'm able to share this with Yisrael. I've been, like I said, this is my 50th anniversary of coming into this truth, and I've seen things sort of go downhill over the years. I've seen some hopes. I've recently seen some cause for hope, and I always do have hope because I know the Most High is true to His word, and we thought as a people and reestablished as His people. But I've seen some things in Yisrael that have made me turn my head and sort of cluck my tongue, because I've seen some of the morals and the values that we had, some of the mores and the values that we had, and we seem to have been losing them, due to the pervasiveness of this society, I guess. So I'm always glad to speak about this topic. I'm glad to shed any light that I can. I'm no longer married, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect and love the institution of marriage. And I love it when I see that young people are doing it in the proper manner by going through the rituals of courtship, meeting family and remembering that it is the joining of two families, not just two people. So I'm always glad to have an opportunity to speak on that.
Hallelujah for God. For those who just joined us, we're on the line with an elder. You know, it's good. It's Emah Naami, God Levi. If you heard me say congratulations on 50 years in understanding and waking up and continuing to strive in this truth. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like I said, for me, in this time, the Most High just had me sitting really at the feet of the elders and just listening and learning and growing, and I'm being tempered, really. They have a wealth of information that even though the younger ones coming along may have learned more, it's always good to hear because history repeats itself. And so I just thought it so interesting and timely to bring her in to speak about, like she said, this very important topic, which is marriage. There's so many rumors going around, Emah, and I'm quite sure you've heard of, you know, when you lay with them, that's your husband, or that's your wife, and that's your Isha, and people picking up, you know, wives, like people pick up pennies off the floor, like, oh, this is a nice one. You put her in the pocket. You understand what I'm saying? Throw her down in the piggy bank. People got wives on reserve. This is, and I've done some videos or some commentary on what I have seen in my short time in walk, going on a decade at this point, and just it was enough for me to say, wait a minute, this is problematic. And so we're going to go ahead, and I want to say that yes, we need those who are coming behind the elders to learn the things that have been done again, so we don't think it's brand new. Learn the mistakes. And I'm so glad that someone else picked up a form of newsletter to inform. This is things that everybody can't do everything, you know. And when the elders have done what they do, we learn of them, and so that we could continue this on. And so it is that we desire of our children. So without further ado, we're going to jump off into this shacking up marriage type stuff. Emah, what made you want to write that so many years ago?
This is what alarmed me. Hallelujah. All praises to the Most High. This is what I saw. I saw these men, and I'm not against the idea of polygyny when it's done right. The problem is that most of our men can't afford a second wife, and those who do, sometimes their wives can't afford a second wife because they're becoming the main breadwinners of the family. What I saw was something that turned into perversity. It became that as soon as a young lady started menstruating, these men were sniffing around them and hunting around them, looking for second wives or looking for wives. And what they did, instead of realizing that it is a ceremony and it is the coming together of two families, they would go and pick up these women and figure that if they laid with them, that constituted marriage. It does not. Not only that, but we had a sisterhood where we spoke about this, where you know, even the women who were without men, they were allowing these perverse folks to come into their homes and take out their daughters. This is not what a righteous people does. No. If we look back at our history, we look back at the history of our fathers, they went to go find them wives, first of all, wives who were virtuous, wives who feared the Most High. They also went with substance. They did not just go and yank up some woman and talk about, yeah, baby, okay, you know, I like you, I like the way you look, come on, we're husband and wife. It doesn't constitute that. And for these men that stand up in my face and tell me, well, the laying with does constitute marriage, I'm telling them that they're liars to their bald face. That's not marriage. And I have proof that we didn't do it that way. Whenever you see a situation where a young woman can lose her life for not being a virgin in her father's house, this is serious business. The Most High has it on record that if you lay with a woman who's betrothed, she's treated like a wife, you can lose your life for that. You not supposed to. When you lay with this woman, if her father decides that she's not going to be given to marriage, you can't do that. This is law. This is not anything that I'm making up out of my head. So I get very, very upset when I see these people who say, well, because I laid with the woman, she's my wife. No, sir. No, sir. And I got news for you, too. Even with our polygynous marriages, which we know that we approve of, because we are not sovereign in this place, that second, third, fifth, 10th, whatever number she comes behind number 1 is not recognized by the state. And I realize I've seen some polygamous marriages that work very, very well, and I've seen some that have been a bust from day one. So what I'm saying is that we have to really get serious about not only the ritual of marriage, but the ritual of courtship and the decency that comes with approaching someone's family and asking for this young lady's hand in marriage, and also respecting her household enough not to go in there and lay with this young lady while she's still either in her parents' house or if she's even in her own house, but to respect her as a woman.
Ooh, Emah. Right now it's getting turned up. I know definitely some people are going to be twitching in their seat or pacing the ground to really hear this information coming out in the way that it is, definitely from an elder who would have seen it and has seen it time and time again. So we kind of got a viewpoint of what's going on, the whole thought process of, I like you, I take you, you're mine. And we see how erroneous that thought process is. So if someone would like a male, and this is also for the females, because oftentimes we as women subscribe to that erroneous doctrine and only feel the fire when you enter into it, and really never took time to consider it on the front end. So say you have two fresh, can you touch a little bit? Well, actually you did, so let's continue. So I was going to say touch about as soon as they see, especially the young person coming into the truth, a woman who's just into the truth. I've seen this, where it is now, people play, this one is mine and that one is mine. They haven't had time to, detox really from certain things that they're coming out of, and they really take that opportunity to manipulate their mind, miseducate them, so that they can then control them. So that's another thing that I saw. But can we talk about it the proper way now? If you have a man and a woman, let's talk about the proper way. Or if you wanted to talk about what I was just saying, you can do that as well.
No, I am. But what I'm saying is that I have seen this. I've seen some young women who come into law who are turned off by the way that they are being pursued and treated by men. When a young woman comes into the law, comes in to try to get her understanding and get back her heritage, she's not like fresh meat that you put in the butcher shop, which some men seem to treat, oh, here's a new one, oh, let me get, they really get all upset about this instead of letting this woman come in, learn about the law, and then pursue her in a righteous manner if this is your goal. I've heard some young women back in the day when I was in there, and I've heard it because I've heard it even when I was a single woman and I was being pursued by some. They say, oh, he's an Israelite. I don't want to have nothing to do with him because, I know how those Israelite men are. I've heard young women who were brought up in this way of life who said, I'm going to marry anything but an Israelite, or somebody who proclaims to be an Israelite. Now, I'm saying to myself, there's something wrong with this picture. Yes. If this is the mindset that we have. You know what I'm saying? You talk about you'd rather marry anybody than someone who proclaims themselves as an Israelite? No, there's something wrong with that. So
indeed,
we have to rethink. If we all say we're striving for righteousness, and listen, we all say, if this is true, that we should be trying to pursue all aspects of righteousness, including the ritual of marriage, including the way that you take these people as brides and bridegrooms. I've heard some brothers say to me, well, just because we don't have papers don't mean we're not married. Get out of here with that nonsense. My point is, look, you take that woman, and if you really want to honor her before the Most High and before the community, then you have a ritual going on. You have papers. These are exchanges between families to say that this woman has been given to you and she's recognized by the community. So this nonsense about, because I lay with her, she's my wife, nonsense. That's all it is nonsense. And we fall for it because we see Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and all them and whatnot. Oh yeah, they're whatnot. They've been living together for years and they're not married. Even Kate and William, they live together. But that's them. That's not supposed to be us. as we're returning to this way of life and returning to this law, we're not supposed to do it like the other nations. And that's one of the things that gets us into trouble all the time. We want to do what everybody else does. We're not supposed to. Unfortunately, we don't have enough community or togetherness, which I'm praying that the Most High, and I know He's going to do it anyhow because He said He would, that we're going to have more unity and we're going to have a community that supports our warriors and our values. But in the meantime, if we're striving for righteousness, then one of the things we need to do is that our young people and our older people, whoever's getting married or whoever wants to form a union, they should be doing it according to righteousness.
Ooh, that is the voice of Emah Naami, that Levi, and I agree in all that she has just said concerning what is going on. For me, it's one of the essential, after returning to the true and living power, marriage is the next, and producing of children is the next most very important thing that you're going to be doing, because you're going to have to pass this on, and you're going to have to secure the future. And so if from the very beginning it has been polluted or has been made common or based, from the very beginning it is compromised, and you compromise the children, and you compromise the future, basically. So definitely it's something that needs to be spoken about, because we're producing more of the same. We're producing more of the same. So definitely thank you for that one. So tell us then, Emah, and I just want to say this. Like you said, we are not the other nations. Marriage, death, and birth, or some of the most either celebrated or mournful times in people's lives.
That's
and to
right.
skip over or rob someone or a family of the opportunity to celebrate in the marriage of their child, that's robbery.
Right. I agree.
That is robbery.
Men say they try to give the example of Yitzchak when Rebecca came to him, or Rivka came to him. Yeah, they said, oh, well, see, it says, the Tanakh says he took her in the tent and she became his wife and he was confident for his mother. Listen, do you think that Abraham sent his servant with all those camels laden down with gifts to go and ask for this woman, for him to yank her on in the tent and lay with her? We look at the Tanakh and we don't read in between the lines because it doesn't give us detail A, B, C, D, E. But you know good and well that he had a wedding feast. If he had a feast when this boy was weaned, you know good and well he's getting married, and he sent away to get this bride and sent with gifts and gave gifts to her and her family. You mean to tell me she just runs into the tent and that's the end of that? No. What do you think the Psalm says, the 19th Psalm, is like the bride coming out of her pavilion and the bridegroom coming out of his chambers? What, bride and bridegroom don't count anymore? Get out of here with that nonsense. And I'm tired of hearing this. What happens is that if you know anything about the customs of the Middle East, this wedding feast probably lasted a week, maybe even two, by the time those revelers got out of there. You hear what I'm telling you? And they had to send everybody home with gifts and everything like this. This is a grand occasion. Marriage is one of the most important rituals that you will have in your life. The birth you can't control, the death you can't control. But these rituals are celebrated by any sane society. These are rituals that are celebrated. Marriage is a big thing. So when we sit here and talk about, oh, yeah, well, I took her in the tent and she became, no.
But as you just said, I agree. When I was doing some research some time ago on it, and still even today in India, which is a Shemitic environment, it is, like you said, 7 days they feast for and celebrate. And it's something that they plan a very long time for. And it's so much so that I saw in recent times that to ensure they spend so much time, effort, and energy, they start getting marriage insurance, just in case something happens that the event doesn't go through, because that's how much money is invested. Can we talk a little bit about, in this day and age, because people don't see the value of what would some call the bride price, and the family doesn't have a dowry, that she now becomes, not to say that you're buying the woman, but because you don't have to prove your ability to sustain her, how does that contribute to it being so easy to acquire a wife? Well, because the acquisition of the wife today is just like, buying a Metro card. Very, very easy. So can we talk about that?
No, you're absolutely correct. What happens is that even in this country, years ago, even in the time that I was growing up, a young man had to come to the family and prove that he was financially able to take care of a wife, that he was going to, that he didn't have a bad family history. Because I remember, I used to think they were a bunch of old fogies when the old folks used to say, you bring some young man in to introduce him to your family because that's the way you did it. You didn't sneak around and you meet him over there by this and you meet him at the club or anything like that. You brought him home to the family. And they would say, who his people, or wait a minute, I know his people. And they would give you a family history of that particular person or their particular family, or they would find out the family history and tell you whether or not you were making a right choice or whether or not you could continue to see this person. They not only had to be of a person who had a background that was stable as far as providing income and providing support for the woman, but they also had to be of strong moral character. This is when back in those days it was, does this family go to church? Are they upstanding in the community? Are they a bunch of drinkers? Are they a bunch of gamblers? Are they a bunch of wife beaters or, husband beaters? Are they loose women in the family and whatnot like that? And this was how it was determined. Now today, like you said, this business with a Metro card, and that's the end of that. No. You should be today, if we're thinking about righteousness and we're talking about raising righteous children, let's start from there. We're teaching these children not only to love and respect the Most High and His laws, but we also try to educate them to be the best that they can be. We're trying to instill in them a sense of responsibility, a sense of purpose, a sense of building up their character, and in presenting themselves as righteous people, not only before the Most High, but before their community. In that vein, then, you want them to seek out righteous mates who have been brought up in this way of life, because just like Rivka, it grieves you when they go outside of the community to pick up these mates and whatnot like that. So what happens is that you're raising them for this very purpose because you want to continue. You found this truth. You want them to continue. Now, there's no guarantee that they're going to do it, but you should be raising them that way as far as trying to be righteous people with righteous thoughts. If you raise a young man that way or a young woman that way, then there's certain things that they must expect out of marriage too. You expect that woman to be able to manage her household and manage any children that she may have and raise them in a righteous manner. And you expect that young man to be able to provide for his household, to treat his wife righteously and not treat her like she's some floozy or something like that. This is what you're raising them for. You want them to do it in a righteous manner. This is what they say in the Proverbs, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to raise righteous families so they will continue on to raise righteous future families so that this nation will continue under righteousness. We know that it was unrighteousness that got us kicked out of the land before. We don't want to repeat history. We don't want to repeat those mistakes, so we want to do it the right way. And a lot of times it sets us on this idea of marriage and how men and women even view the nation of Israel according to some of these rituals that we've done rightly or wrongly.
Agreed. Indeed, I like the fact that you brought out that these are the things that people think small that brought down the people because things started getting perverse. I know I did something on the sons of Baat who were doing the same thing. They were using, in this sense, their position, Eli's sons in the book of Samuel, they were using their position to debase the women who came to the temple. And it was told their father, and he didn't deal with it properly, so the Most High dealt with him. So people overlook these things because oftentimes the role of the woman or her quote-unquote importance is not highlighted to the degree where people might think that offense against the daughters of Zion is a problem. But it definitely is. That is the base of the community. The man and the woman's relationship makes and establishes everything else. And so if that is in turmoil, if that is uneven, if that the foundation is broken there, it's the mother who sits with the son who later becomes a prince or a head in the nation. You understand what I'm saying? So if his mother is corrupted, then guess what? So it's like we underestimate these roles, but they are, like you said, they're very important about who's coming together and who's marrying. And like you said, many people are going outside of the nation because the minute you do say you're an Israelite, they run the other way. And that's a sad thing. Can you touch a little?
It's a very sad commentary, like I've said before, and I'm going to get to your question in a minute. I'm a mother who had to raise sons basically alone after a period of time. And you can raise a young man you can raise a boy to be a man, but you can't teach him how to be a man. You need a man that is either, if you got a righteous brother, that is, and whatnot. And even women who are not married, who have children, who are thinking of getting married again. And I realize we all have our normal needs and whatnot like that. But before you go and just jump into a situation because you feel you must have a man there, I think that you need to think about it too. You still want to have a righteous man, or a man, especially if he's coming into a situation where those children are not his own, his natural children. You have to be very careful about who you're choosing to come and share your life with at any stage in life. So this idea of marriage doesn't go out the window because, you may be 40 years old or whatever years it is, 30 or 40 years old. The idea of marriage doesn't go out of the window then. You still are looking for a right mate. If you remember the story of Ruth and Naami, what happened is that even though she had been married to one of the sons of Israel, a Moabitess woman had been married, when it came down to marriage and whatnot to Boaz, Naami still instructed her on the way that she should go. And you see what he did? What he did is that because he didn't want to shame her, he sent her home before daylight, so that because they hadn't done anything or hadn't completed this act, he didn't want her to be shamed. He wanted to do it in the right way. And this is a man who was rich, who could have had this woman if he wanted to, but he wanted to do it in the right way. So he went according to the law in order to take this woman. And this is what I'm saying, that if one of our men could do that for a foreign woman, then you mean to tell me the daughters of Israel don't deserve the same treatment? Nonsense.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask another question, but foreign women was always a snare for the men of Israel. In your experience, how has that related to the family structure or the family unit? Have you seen the propensity of the men to bring in more of a foreign woman, or do they treat foreign women better than they would their own, or give more respect in that way?
It would appear to me, it does appear to me in many instances. I've seen it both ways. I would say it's about 50-50. But certainly when you look at the overall Israelite population, it seems that our men, especially if they're men with any substance and any position, they seem to value foreign women more than they value Israelite women. I've often wondered sometimes when I see these basketball players and golfers and what have you, who definitely are Israelites or have Israelite background, go and marry women who are so far outside. I mean, they're foreign. You know what I mean? And they give this wealth of the substance to them, while you have many beautiful, modest, well-raised, intelligent Israelite women who are just languishing on the vine, which makes no sense to me. I love this thing that you do, BT Emah, in The Angry Black Woman. You portray all of the aspects of what people believe to be the angry black woman, and you go into it in little depth. I'm only partially into your book, but I've seen your videos, and you have nailed it on the head. What happens is that this is the image that is portrayed of us, and it's the image that has been allowed to perpetuate throughout all the images that can be given of us, of this is what this woman is all about. And if you do, I mean, there's the thing about stereotypes is that some of it is based in truth. But basically, we have some women who are fine women, who are wonderful women, who would make wonderful mates, and yet still they're bypassed because we're so busy running after foreign women. If you want to see an example, here's POTUS, or the President of the United States, who is a Hamite, and he still chose an Israelite woman for his mate because his man is not crazy. He knows that you need a woman that has some understanding of your background or of your heritage, even though it's not the same heritage. Nevertheless, he did choose this woman. So if that's going to be the standard by which you judge women, then you should be looking for an Israelite wife. Unfortunately, when we look at the book of Ezra, we see that when it came down to we hadn't read the Lord since the time of Judges, and these men had to put away their foreign wives. And the way it sounds to me in the book, it sounds like it was a lot of them. So this is not a new concept, obviously, but we need to understand that first of all, you don't need to. And I'm not telling you who to choose. I'm not saying that foreign women cannot accept this way of life and be just as good, and all the children that will be produced of that will be Israelites. I understand that if you're talking about an Israelite man. But the point is that we should not be, our first thought should not be to sleep with the enemy. You know what I'm saying? I don't care whether or not you can get the most liberal Caucasian or the most liberal Asian. They are not our people, and they don't have the same experience that we have. And there's sometimes some men, and I've found this with the young men that I've talked to, some men find that there's safety in that because they don't have to, they can always pull the quote-unquote black card, Well, you don't understand me because I'm black, And this is the reason why, I don't expect you to understand me. I don't have to get into the deepness. I don't have to let you have the key to my soul because we have the same experience, and you know that what I'm handing you is a line of garbage rather than the black experience type situation. So I've seen this happen too. But I'm saying that if we're talking about really building a nation again, I'm talking about really building a nation, then we ought to be looking inside of our own community for our wives and our husbands. If you notice, yes, even though Chinese do marry outside of their race and Indians do marry outside of the race, for the most part, when an Indian man gets married, he gets married to an Indian woman, and vice versa. When a Chinese man gets married, he gets married to a Chinese woman because he realized that they're coming from out of the same understanding, the same culture. It doesn't always happen. I know that they do marry into other cultures. I do know that. I've seen Hamites, many Hamites, who feel that they must marry into another culture. But I'm not really concerned about the Indian or the Chinese or the Hamite. I'm concerned about Israel, and I'm concerned about the perpetuation of our families, and I'm concerned about us, raising up righteous seed in righteous unions.
Agreed. In your estimation, how important is it for the young man to remain pure as well as the young woman? Often people put emphasis that the young girl should be without blemish before she enters into marriage. How important is it for the young man as well? And when he is not, how does this affect, his dealings with the wife of his youth, if it does at all?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it's very important for the young men for the simple reason is that you don't need to gain any experience. You will gain experience with that woman. And not only that, but one of the things, especially today, when what's the phrase, frisky can be risky? Today, when you're moving around with all of various diseases and things that you don't get a cure for, you need to come to that marriage just the same way you expect that woman to come to the marriage is the same way you should come to the marriage. You should be the things that I don't think that we understand that when you're talking about raising children in righteousness, that's male and female in righteousness. The male should be coming up with the idea that he's going to keep himself pure until his marriage, so that he brings a pure vessel to his marriage, as well as the female. It's not all on the female. I know what happens is that in our communities we have a tendency to want to put it all on the female. Oh, that's just better remain righteous until she's married. And then even when there's not a situation when she's either going outside, before the benefit of marriage and had children, it's all on her. Well, she's expected to raise those children. I saw a son of one of the chief men in Israel who had laid with a young woman. She wound up having a child, and then he treated her like she was a piece of garbage. And I was so upset by that. And I spoke to him about it. I did speak to him about it. That's why I can speak now, and I'm not mentioning his name to protect his privacy. But I'm telling you, it was terrible. And I said to him, listen, don't you think that you're supposed to keep yourself clean too? You want this woman to be clean, but you humbled her. And then you had the nerve. He did just like Amon did with Tamar. Oh, I don't want, he rejected her. And I'm saying to myself, have we lost it for real? Is this the way we're supposed to behave? And I'm telling you, some of these examples have been bad examples. When you see something, if you see somebody jumping out the window and you realize that once they hit the ground, they're dead, you don't follow them. You don't want to do that. Some of these examples that you see that are not righteous, they should not be followed. And our leaders and priests and rabbis and whoever is in charge should not condone these kinds of things. I've seen it condoned sometimes when chief young men do things that are wrong and do things that are unrighteous, and it's been condoned from the top. So we need to stop that. If we're really serious, and I use the word serious about returning to this law, the statutes and the commandments, then we need to really think about marriage and think about how we deal one with another on a righteous manner, particularly when it comes to marriage.
Oh, man. Wow. This is Gavert Emah Naami Baht Levi, and she is breaking it down. This is her 50 years of experience in this way, and I think this is a very important conversation because, like she says, if we're really talking about return, you can't skip over marriage. When I began to open up and speak about relationships, I was blown away by the response. Because all the time I'm speaking about health, I'm speaking about this, I'm speaking about that. It's like, okay. And the minute I opened that gate, it was like, oh. I'm like, whoa, this is the problem. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? This is one of the roots of the problem. How we relate to ourselves and by extension how we relate to one another. So like the red is saying, this is a very, very important topic. And because the elders and the leaders and the teachers are doing it as well, or turning a blind eye to it, it is telling the next generation and the next generation that this is how we move. And I like the fact that you brought out, just because the example is there doesn't make it a good one.
That's right.
I always say, what happened at the end of that? Mm-hmm. People bring up, okay, Yaakov had 4 wives, and I'm like, well, what? Because I like to look at the psychology. What was the psychology of it, and how did it end up? David had 7 women. What was the psychology? What was the emotional state? And how did it end up?
Right.
One person in the Tanakh, was it Gideon, had, what was that? 79, 80-something, I think 70, 79? He had how many children? 80 sons, something of that nature.
It was one king who had 70. You talk about in the case of Queen Atalia, who came in there and killed up all but the one that had been hidden.
Right, that was another one.
Yeah.
That was another one. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was Gideon. When his sons, the son of the concubine, was upset, he said, do you want them to rule over us? And then he planned to kill all of his. So all of this enmity, all of this strife that is procreated from the way in which we're having these unions, you understand? All of this is an extension. And so if we don't look at our effects, long term, not just. And that could be a totally whole nother show about people who say they're building, on broken foundations. I don't know how that goes. Mm-hmm. But, that's crazy to me. But, if we don't look at these things and see in recent times even, like I said, I've done a lot of research on it. In recent times, our brothers and sisters in Demona have come out and had conversations of what people projected that it would be and the reality of what it is. See, we don't like to deal with the projections and realities.
Mm-hmm. And you got to remember that the foundation of a nation begins with the family. That's the first unit that forms. Without family, you don't have community. Without community, you don't have nation. And this is why it's so important that we build strong families from the ground up, beginning with that man and that woman who are going to produce children, hopefully, and by the blessing of the Most High, and going to produce children who have come into a union wherein righteousness is the reigning quality. You know what I'm saying? And if we're really going to get back, like I said, if we SERIOUS about this, then we really have to get back to this. BT, would you like for me to begin to read this?
Yes, Emah, you can go ahead. I'm ready for you now.
Okay. I wrote back in 2003, I think it was, an article on marriage because I had done the research, and I included in this article the ketubah. A ketubah is a marriage contract. And I gave several examples of them in this article and attached them to this article so that people wouldn't think that I was just pulling this out of the air. I'll send it to anyone who wants to see it as it was written. If you contact me, my email address is F like in Frank, A like in Apple, O like in Orange, number 3 at Verizon.net. I'll repeat that. That's faith, allegiance, and opening 3 at Verizon.net. But this is the article, and I did some I did some research on it. I have my references in there where I got this information from, and so and so forth. So I'm going to try to read through it quickly. And incidentally, I also included a simple marriage contract at the end of this article. It's called The Ritual of Marriage. In most societies, there are approximately 3 rituals which people place the greatest importance upon: birth, marriage, and death. Since this is the traditional month in Western society, which goes to show you that I wrote it in June, for weddings, I thought that the ritual of marriage might be discussed as it occurred within Israelite society. First of all, we must realize that in Israelite society, marriage between the man and his wife is a family and community affair. Marriages were civil contracts rather than religious ones, and basically served the purposes of providing companionship, a secure environment in which to raise children, and to secure property and tribal rights. Although love may have played a part in it, for instance, in the case of Jacob and Raquel, marriages were usually arranged according to tribe, status, wealth, property, and other social considerations. For men and women living in an ancient Eastern society, the perspective on love and marriage was quite different than it is today. To begin with, love was more of a commitment than one of feeling. It was more a pledge to make a relationship work. For instance, whoso findeth a wife findeth a great good and obtaineth favor of Yah. This is in Proverbs 18:22. In a world of arranged marriages, couples were expected to grow to love each other after marriage, not on first loving the one you marry. The act of marriage in Israelite society had 2 basic parts: the betrothal and the wedding. If a young man was interested in a woman, he would approach the father of his hopeful bride and express his intentions to him. Sometimes the couple already knew each other, but everything had to be done in proper order. If the father and his daughter agreed that she would become his wife, the marriage contract was drawn up. The marriage was official when this betrothal took place. From that time forth, the woman was betrothed and off limits to other suitors. The young man would arise and go to his father's house, telling him the news of his betrothal. A betrothed woman was, in the eyes of the people, set aside for marriage, and the penalty for violating her was the same as for a married woman, where you can find this in Exodus 21:8 and 22:16. Thus, a betrothed woman was considered as belonging to the man to whom she was promised. After that, the families would engage in financial negotiations in which there would be three types of gift exchanges to ensure the quote-unquote engagement: the mohar, or the bride price; dowry, unless a family was extremely poor, brides were also provided with their own dowries; and gifts that the bridegroom gives to his bride. That is, men seeking wives had to demonstrate their financial ability to sustain a wife, usually in the display of gifts provided to the bride's father and family. This can be found in Genesis 24:1-10. The marriage price, or mohar, was simply compensation to a girl's father for his loss of help. This was very important because in our society, a daughter was a worker, and if you lost her or gained her, you were losing or gaining a vital worker. This may give the wedding the outward appearance of a purchase, but it was not. The future husband acquired a right over the woman, but the woman was not bought and sold. The mohar was considered to be the woman's property, although it was usually kept in her father's possession. Its basic purpose was to protect the woman against being left without support if she was to become widowed. The payment of the mohar, or dowry, incidentally, was simply compensation for the loss of the daughter's labor and was not to be considered as a wedding gift. There was no religious rite per se, but a marriage contract called a ketubah, which I've attached, was drawn up that was finalized with the concluding of the marriage, although there was a feast at the conclusion of the festivities. This can be found in Genesis 29:27 and Judges 14:10. The ketubah is a document that has traditionally outlined a husband's obligation toward his wife, including clothing and conjugal rights. References to these obligations can be found in Exodus 21:10 and 11, although no mention is made of a document. The Apocrypha, however, contains mention of a scroll that was brought to the marriage ceremony of Tobias and Sarah, an early form of the ketubah, by the way. The need for ketuvot increased during the Babylonian exile between 586 and 536 BCE, when many men migrated to Egypt and left wives and families behind to care for property that was held in the husband's name. Papyrus records dating from around 440 BCE in Aramaic clearly outlined the principle of securing the wife's property. Included in this document is the sum of the bridal price paid to the father of the bride, as well as the sum of the bride and bridegroom's dower contribution. In addition, the wife is named as the beneficiary of the estate should the husband die. Nearly 400 years later, the ketubah became a contract written by the groom and was presented to the bride. Today, richly decorated ketubot can be found in the great museums of the world. Modern ketubah texts have followed social convention or tradition to include family history, achievement, and lineage as part of the design. A betrothal period of time of usually a year or more was set aside for marriage preparation following the acceptance by both families of the terms. This preparation time before the marriage is very important, as it is a serious commitment, not to be rushed into as a spur-of-the-moment serendipitous event. Under the father's guidance, the young man would begin the building of his home for his future bride. Often it was in addition to the father's house, or if they were wealthy and had much land, the father would give him a portion to build on. After the preparation period, the marriage celebration would take place, and this could be found in Isaiah 61:9-11 and 62:5, Jeremiah 7:34, and Jeremiah 16:9. In the ancient world, the wedding procession was a great event. People usually accompanied it by carrying torches or candles. This practice has been well attested to from as early as the 14th century BCE in Canaan. The chief ceremony began with the entry of the bride into the bridegroom's house. The groom wore a diadem and was with his friends making music. The bride wore beautiful embroidered clothing and jewels and a veil that she didn't remove until she entered the bridal chamber. Love songs were sung as the bride was escorted into the home by her companions, and speeches were given in the couple's honor. The marriage was typically consummated at the close of the marriage feast, which could last from 1 to 2 weeks. The bride was still veiled and was led to the bridal chamber, usually by her parents. Afterwards, the blood-stained linen cloth was saved and presented to her parents to prove the bride's virginity in case her husband attempted to slander her name. And this could be found in the law in Deuteronomy 22:13-21. When the whole family could not be present, the bride may be sent away to her new husband's family, as was so in the case of Isaac's wife, Rebekah. Note her modesty in greeting her new husband to be. And I'm reading from Genesis 24:59-66. So they sent their sister Rebekah on her way, along with her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you increase to thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the gate of their enemies." Then Rebekah and her maids got ready and mounted their camels and went back with the man. So the servant took Rebekah and left. Now Yitzchak had come from Beer Lahai Roy, for he was living in the Negev. He went out to the field at evening to meditate, and as he looked, he saw camels approaching. Rebekah also looked up and saw Yitzchak, Isaac. She got down from her camel and asked the servant, "Who is that man in the field coming to meet us?" "He is my master," the servant answered. So she took her veil and covered herself. Then the servant told Isaac all he had done. Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. As I said, you can find this in Genesis 24:59-66. We also understand that the act of intercourse or lying with does not, I'll repeat, does not constitute marriage. Even a captive woman had rights and couldn't just be lain with. This is in Deuteronomy 21:10-14, where the Lord tells you that you have to give her 30 days to mourn her family, and you cut her hair and pare her nails at that point. The law also protected the rights of children of a wife who was unloved. This is in Deuteronomy 21:15-17, where they say that even if you have two wives and one is hated, the rights of primogeniture still went to the wife that had the firstborn son. To view how seriously we felt that marriage precedes intercourse, take the example of Dinah, the daughter of Yaakov and Leah. This is found in Genesis 34:1-30. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but most of us know the story, how Levi and Shimon went after Shechem had taken her and laid with her, and then said he loved her after that, and then wanted to marry her after the fact. Well, you know what our brother said, shall he lay with our sister as he does with a harlot, and we're not having that. So anyhow, that's that passage in Genesis. To continue with the article, the age in which we currently live is one of shattered promises and broken relationships, an age sick with sentimentality that has lost the sight of the vow, till death do us part. The word love has taken on another meaning and is defined with all kinds of terms except commitment. I'm not saying at all that love should be ruled out, because it definitely makes life more enjoyable, definitely. What I am saying is that our perceptions of love can distort images and make you blind to things that would be all too apparent if you were approaching the subject with logic. And I realize that love is not logical, but you need to evaluate these things that you go in. That's my little side parenthetical remarks. Mind you, I'm not speaking of Western society's idea of love either, the kind you see featured in its books, plays, movies, TV, and other media. That is raw commercialism, not love. I'm speaking of the kind of enduring love that is based on respect, trust, and confidence. These are the ingredients of true love. As the Ecclesiastes tells us, live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of thy life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity, for that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. The obvious key to having those marriages that last until death do us part is, of course, to find the right person for you in the first place and then stay with them. I know that this is much easier than it sounds, especially today. Young ladies should try and save the precious gift of their virginity for the man who is worthy of it. After all, it is the greatest prize that you can bring to their marriage bed. Of course, they should also bring the skills of cooking, sewing, child rearing. This is where sometimes caring for their siblings and those babysitting jobs pay off. And most importantly, the virtues acquired from staying steadfast in the laws of Torah. Men should not feel threatened by educated or smart women either. If such a woman is righteous, she ultimately enhances the image and stature of her husband. In finding and winding up with those husbands and wives you will want to stay with, this means that we'll have to establish periods of courtship again. Note, courting does not mean shacking up or laying with on a trial basis before marriage. That's not what courting means. Potential suitors must present themselves to the daughter's family, preferably with a wise senior male head present, even if it's not the Abba. In other words, if you have an uncle or a brother or some male figure that your family respects, he should be present. And he should make known, if not known already, his qualifications or pedigree. In other words, it's almost like you apply for a job. You bring in what makes you qualified to want to take this young, precious daughter to your wife. I know many of you may say this is an unnecessary hassle, but let me ask you this. Isn't it better that all of you learn as much as possible about your daughter and son's potential mate before the marriage than after? And I know it's no guarantee, just like nothing in life is. Yet it sure beats finding out all of these things that could have been learned by diligent inquiry beforehand. And yes, I'm saying that as parents you have the right to get all up in the business of the person who you presume will be joining your family. The other family, incidentally, has the same right, so be prepared for close scrutiny yourselves. Mind you, I'm not saying that a man and woman from vastly different backgrounds can't make it. I'm just saying that it makes it easier if you're coming from the same points of view. As it says in Amos 3:3, can two walk together except they agree? More than anything, you want to bring together two people who fear Yah and want to keep his commandments, because this is the true and solid foundation of happy marriages. In closing, may I offer two proverbs, one biblical and one newly composed, that describe the ideal mate. And I'm quoting from Proverbs 31:10-31, when it says, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he can have no lack of gain. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field, and bideth. With the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth out, not out by night. She layeth her hands to the wheel, to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh fine linen and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth Yah, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. And this is an Israelite woman's proverb, or Proverbs 32, as I like to call it. A man of honor who can find? For his price is above diamonds and gold. A wife entering his house can trust him, for he works diligently to sustain her. He will do her good and not evil all the days of his life. He tendeth his fields with care, and there is no idleness in his hands. His family is glad when he enters, and none hide their face from him. His household is secure, and his wife and children do not live in fear. His wife feels free to enrich him because he has enriched her. His mother and father take pride in him, and all his household praise him. He sitteth in the council of the wise, and does not gather with base or violent fellows. His name is respected in the gates because his wife and children reflect that they are well provided for, and their behaviors are honorable. Righteousness and integrity are his armor, and he sitteth in the council of the elders. Though he is a man of substance, yet is he known for his kindness and compassion. His servants serve him long and faithfully. He is known to fear Yah, love justice, and hate unjust gain. There are many men of valor, but thou, beloved brother, art a man of renown. May Yah always bless and reward you the fruit of your hands, and let your own works praise you in the gates. And I close with, may Yahweh bless all of the new and older marriages in our communities and shine his blessings on all potential and future marriages among our people. And I include with this a ketubah, the English text of the ketubah, where it reads very beautifully, and I give you various examples of the ketuvot that we produced or were produced as a proof and confirmation of a marriage. So I hope that this has shed a little light on what we're saying here about marriage and how seriously we take the ritual of marriage in the Israelite community. Toda Rabah, this opportunity, BT.
Toda Rabah, Emah, beautifully read, beautifully written article. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I pray that for those who are listening, if you find value in this, definitely share it, pass it along, because this is definitely a topic that is applicable to both men and women. And it is definitely one of the keys to returning with a strong foundation. So I thank Emah for coming in this evening, or afternoon, I keep saying evening, and sharing with us her words, her written words. Sometimes it's powerful when you read it, and it's even more powerful when the person who wrote it read it. So I'm so glad for that. Would you like to say anything before we go?
Kane, just to say Toda Rabah for this opportunity to bring this subject to the forefront and for discussing it. I thank you for bringing it up again, because I thought it had been forgotten about when I saw some of the behaviors. And I do celebrate. I do have one of my godsons, Toda Yah. He just celebrated an anniversary of long-standing, a beautiful family, along with another family in Israel who celebrated their anniversaries too. And it's a beautiful thing when you see these things. These are the things that encourage me. So I'm urging all of our young people and all of our, even people who are thinking about getting married for the second, third, whatever time it is, that you take these principles to heart, and that you realize that when we build righteous families, we're going to have a righteous community, we're going to have a righteous nation. May the Most High bless all of our efforts that he finds in righteousness.
Hallelujah. And on that note, I want to say shalom to all.
Okay. Hallelujah. Toda Rabah, Od Pa'ad BT. Shalom Uvracha.
Thank you so much for tuning in. This show has been brought to you by SOULONOMiCS 101. My name is Emah Naami, and I want to give a great thank you and let you know that we have an awesome project on deck. It's called The Angry, quote-unquote, Black Woman Syndrome Revisited. It's a book that takes a look at the historical stereotype of the angry, quote-unquote, black woman as it is in media, as it is in our culture. So you can definitely hop on over to my website. That's www.emunayisrael.com to learn more about it. And if you want to link me on social media, check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, and all of that good stuff. So see you then, and until then, be the change that you desire to see in the world. 1.